Alarms were screaming in my cockpit before I even saw the wreck. My tracking screen lit up red, and my ship shook as a shockwave rolled past me from somewhere close. I gripped the controls and pulled hard to the left, dodging a chunk of burning metal that had once been part of a hull. Something big had gone down, and it had gone down fast. I am Ethan Brooks, and I make my living pulling broken ships out of the dark. Most days that means dead engines and empty cargo holds. This was not most days. This wreck was still smoking, still groaning as it settled into the dust of a nameless rock at the edge of the Kesho belt, and my scanners were already screaming that something else was close behind it. Weapons fire, recent, very recent. I brought my cutter down hard beside the broken ship, faster than I should have, because every second mattered and I did not yet know why. The wreck was long and sleek, built for speed, not for war, and it had clearly lost a fight it was never meant to be in. I grabbed my gear, sealed my suit, and ran for the crack in its hull before my brain could talk me out of it. Inside, the air was thin and cold. Sparks fell from a broken panel above me. I called out, my voice sounding strange inside my helmet, and for a moment there was nothing but silence and the tick of cooling metal. Then I heard it. A voice. Weak but steady, coming from behind a sealed door at the back of the ship. I cut through the door with my torch, my hands shaking slightly, not from fear but from the pressure of knowing that whoever was on the other side had survived something meant to kill them. When the metal finally gave way, I saw her. She was pressed against the wall, one hand braced on a support beam, her eyes locked on the opening like she expected another attacker to step through instead of a rescuer. Her suit had failed. She was breathing my ship's borrowed air through a cracked helmet seal, and yet she still looked like she was in control of the room. I did not know yet that she was a princess. I only knew she was alive, and that was enough to move me. I got an arm under her shoulder and pulled her up. She winced but did not cry out. "You are human," she said, her voice rough but clear, like that fact answered something important. "Last I checked," I said. "Can you walk?" "I have been walking for 3 days," she said. "Rationing air, rationing water I did not have. I believe I have earned the right to be carried, salvager." I carried her. We were halfway back to my ship when my proximity alarm went off again. Sharper this time. Something was entering the system. Fast. I did not wait to find out what it was. I got her strapped into the second seat of my cutter, sealed the hatch and pushed the engines harder than they were built for. "They are coming for me," she said, once we were moving. "You need to leave this system immediately." "Already on it," I said, watching 3 new signals appear on my scanner, closing in from behind the moon. "Friends of yours?" "Hunters," she said, "sent by my uncle. My name is Alith Sereth Vantardu. I am third in line for the throne of 40 worlds, and someone in my own family would prefer I did not survive to make that 4 in line." I almost laughed, except the ship rocked hard as something clipped our shields from behind. "Well, Alith, welcome aboard. Things are about to get worse before they get better." The first shot missed us by less than 100 meters. The second one did not miss so cleanly, and my ship groaned as the impact rattled through the hull. I pulled us into a tight spin, using a drifting piece of the wreck as cover, and pushed every ounce of power I had into the engines. "You fly like someone who has done this before," Ilith said, gripping her seat. "I fly like someone who really wants to keep living," I said. "Same thing, most days." Behind us, the hunters split into 2 groups, trying to box us in near the debris field. I knew this system better than most people who had never lived in it, because I had spent years pulling scrap out of exactly this kind of mess. I aimed for a narrow gap between 2 floating chunks of hull plating, close enough that my ship's paint would probably need repainting after, and pushed through it at full speed. One of the hunter ships followed too closely and clipped a piece of debris, spinning off course. The other 2 pulled back, cautious, giving me just enough space to break toward the edge of the belt. "There is a jump point 2 minutes out," I said, checking my charts. "If we can reach it before they regroup, we lose them in transit. And if we cannot? Then we find out how good my shields really are," I said, and pushed the throttle further. The 2 minutes felt like 20. My scanners lit up twice more with weapons fire, both shots grazing our shields instead of hitting the hull directly, which I took as the only good luck I had earned that day. When the jump point finally opened in front of us, a shimmering tear in space, I did not slow down. I aimed straight for it, and did not breathe until we were through. The stars outside changed in an instant, replaced by the strange blue static of jump space, and for the first time since I had cut through that door, the ship went quiet. "We lost them," I said, checking every screen twice to be sure. "For now," Ilith said. She had not relaxed. If anything, she looked more tense now that the noise had stopped, like silence gave her more room to worry. My uncle has resources beyond those 3 ships. He will not stop searching. Then we will not stop moving, I said. There is a station 2 jumps from here. Corvell Station. I know people there. We can get you somewhere safer. Get your suit fixed. Figure out what comes next. You have not asked for a reward, she said, studying me carefully. The way someone studies a puzzle piece that does not seem to fit the picture they expected. Didn't cross my mind, I said honestly. It should have. I am worth a great deal to the right people. Right now you're worth exactly what any person floating in a wreck is worth, I said. Getting you somewhere safe. I'll worry about payment later, if there is any. She did not answer that right away. She turned to look out at the strange blue light of jump space instead, and for a long moment neither of us said anything. It was the first quiet moment since I had found her, and I used it to actually look at her properly for the first time. The markings across her forehead, pale and delicate, the kind of detail that told me she came from a long line of people who mattered to a great many others. But underneath that, she just looked tired and human in a way that had nothing to do with species. Thank you, she finally said, quietly. Most people who find someone like me see a prize. You saw a person drowning. Everyone deserves to be pulled out of the water, I said. Doesn't matter whose water it is. We reached Corvell Station 4 hours later, and I felt myself relax slightly as the familiar shape of it came into view. A wheel of metal turning slowly against the dark. I had traded scrap there for years. I knew the dock workers, the medics, the quiet corners where nobody asked too many questions. I thought, foolishly, that we had bought ourselves some room to breathe. I was wrong. The moment we docked, a man was waiting at the gate, arms crossed, wearing a uniform I did not recognize but instantly disliked. He introduced himself as Colonel Grant Ashby, and he did not waste time with pleasantries. You brought contraband into this station, he said, nodding toward Ilith. That woman is the subject of an active recovery order. She's a person who survived a crash, I said, stepping slightly in front of her. Not contraband. She is the subject of a legal claim by her family, Ashby said. One that supersedes whatever rescue you think you performed. Step aside. I felt Ilith's hand close around my arm, steady despite everything. He works for my uncle, she said quietly. Do not trust anything he says next. Ashby's expression did not change, but something in his eyes told me she was right. The girl is confused, he said. The crash has left her disoriented. It happens. Step aside and let us take her somewhere she can properly recover. I looked at the station security officers standing near him, then at the dock workers who had gone suspiciously quiet, pretending to be busy with their own work instead of watching what was clearly about to become a problem. Nobody moved to help either side. That told me everything I needed to know about how much authority Ashby actually carried here, and how much fear came with it. I think, I said slowly, that I would like to see this claim of yours in writing filed with station authority before anyone goes anywhere. Ashby's jaw tightened. You are making a mistake, Salvager. Wouldn't be my first, I said. He did not draw a weapon. He did not need to. 2 more men stepped out from behind a cargo container, and I understood that this had never been a request. I put a hand back to keep Ilith behind me, my mind racing through every exit I knew on this station, and there were fewer than I would have liked with 3 armed men blocking the main one. There is a maintenance corridor, Ilith whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. Behind the fuel depot. My tutors made me memorize station layouts as a child. I recognized this design. I did not ask how a princess had ended up memorizing the blueprints of stations she had probably never visited before this day. I simply trusted her, because trust, right then, was the only tool I had left. On 3, I said, run. I threw the one thing in my hand, a scanning tool I had been carrying out of habit, straight at Ashby's face, not hard enough to truly hurt him, but hard enough to make him flinch and break his focus for half a second. That half a second was enough. Ilith grabbed my sleeve and pulled, and we ran. We cut left past the fuel depot exactly where she said the corridor would be, and I felt a strange rush of relief seeing the narrow maintenance hatch appear right where her memory had placed it. Shouts rose behind us, but the corridor twisted sharply, giving us cover from a straight shot. I pulled the hatch shut behind us and jammed my scanning tool into the lock mechanism, buying us maybe a minute, maybe less. This leads to the lower ring, Ilith said, already moving. There is a private dock there, smaller ships, less traffic. You're full of surprises. You have no idea, she said, and for the first time since I had met her, there was something like a smile at the edge of her voice, even through the fear. We reached the lower ring dock just as an alarm began sounding through the station, announcing a security lockdown that I was fairly certain had been ordered specifically because of us. I spotted a small transport ship at the far end of the dock, engines already humming, its ramp still down. A woman stood at the base of the ramp, watching us approach with narrow, careful eyes. She wore a pilot's jacket and had the look of someone who had seen enough trouble in her life to recognize more of it walking toward her. Her name, I would learn moments later, was Lena Marsh, an independent hauler I had crossed paths with years ago on a job that had gone sideways in exactly this kind of way. "Ethan Brooks," she said, eyes flicking from me to Eilith and back again. "You look like a man being chased by people with guns." "Astute as always," I said, breathing hard. "Need a ride out of here. Fast." "That depends entirely on who is chasing you," Lena said. "Her uncle's private security," Eilith said, stepping forward before I could answer. "I am willing to pay generously for safe transport, once I am able to access my accounts again." Lena studied her for a long moment, then looked back at me. "You always did have a talent for finding trouble that outweighs you," she said, but she was already turning to lower the ramp fully. "Get in. We can discuss payment plans once we are not standing in the middle of a lockdown." We climbed aboard just as the first of Ashby's men rounded the corner into the dock, and Lena's ship lifted off the platform before the door had even finished sealing behind us. I felt the deck tilt as she pushed hard away from the station, weaving between two docked freighters with a confidence that told me she had done this kind of exit before, more than once. "They will have ships waiting outside the station too," Eilith warned, watching the scanners over Lena's shoulder. "They usually do," Lena said calmly, "which is why I never leave a station the same way I came in." She guided the ship into a narrow maintenance lane meant for cargo drones, far too small for the larger hunter ships to follow, and cut through it at a speed that made my stomach drop. When we emerged on the far side of the station, the hunter ships were nowhere in sight, still searching the main exit routes we had avoided entirely. For a while, nobody spoke. The tension slowly drained out of the cabin, replaced by the quiet hum of the engines and the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat finally slowing down. "You have made a very powerful enemy today," Eilith finally said, looking at me directly. "My uncle does not forgive people who interfere with his plans." "Wouldn't be the first powerful person annoyed with me," I said. "Probably won't be the last." "I am serious, Ethan," she said, using my name for the first time. "This will not end with one chase. He will keep sending people. He has resources across a dozen systems. Then we will keep moving across a dozen systems," I said. "Or we find a way to make sure he stops looking altogether." Lena glanced back at us from the pilot's seat. "There is a way to do that," she said. "If the girl is who she says she is, there are courts, old ones, that still recognize royal claims across the outer systems. If she can prove her uncle ordered the attack on her ship, it becomes a matter of law, not just family politics. That kind of proof would end this a lot faster than running ever will." Eilith's eyes lit up with something I had not seen in her before, a spark of real hope rather than careful control. "The ship's flight recorder," she said suddenly. "It would have logged the attack, the identity of the ships that fired on us. If it survived the crash, it is proof enough to bring before the courts." "Which means we go back," I said slowly, understanding what she meant. "Which means we go back," she agreed, "to the wreck, before anyone else thinks to search it for evidence." Lena raised an eyebrow at both of us. "You want to fly back into the exact system where 3 hunter ships already tried to kill you?" "I want to finish what he started," Eilith said, and there was steel in her voice now. The kind that made me believe every word about her being born to rule something. "My uncle believes I am running. I would rather he learn I am not." I looked at her for a long moment, weighing the risk against the chance to end this properly, instead of simply delaying it. "All right," I said finally. "But we do this smart. Quiet approach, quick retrieval, and out before anyone even knows we were there." We returned to the Kesho belt under cover of a passing ice comet, using its debris trail to mask our approach from any distant sensors. The wreck was still there, untouched, exactly as we had left it hours earlier. I guided Lena's smaller ship in close, and Eilith insisted on coming with me back into the broken hull, refusing to wait behind despite my objections. "It is my ship," she said simply. "I know exactly where the recorder is stored." She led me straight to a compartment near the cockpit, one I had not even noticed on my first pass-through, hidden behind a false panel that only opened when she pressed her palm against a specific section of the wall. The recorder inside was small, undamaged, its casing built to survive exactly this kind of disaster. "Got it," I said, tucking it carefully into my bag. That was when the proximity alarm on my wrist device buzzed, sharp and urgent. Ashby had found us again, faster than either of us expected, 3 ships dropping out of jump space directly above the wreck. "Run," Eilith said, and this time it was her pulling me. We sprinted back through the broken hull, the ground shaking beneath us as the first shots landed somewhere close, tearing into the already ruined ship. I felt heat pass close behind me as we cleared the breach and dove toward Lena's waiting ship, the ramp already lowering to meet us. "Go, go, go," I shouted, and Lena did not need telling twice. The ship lifted off hard, engines screaming, weaving immediately into the debris field for cover, exactly as I had done hours before. Except this time, there were 3 ships to dodge instead of hunting. A shot clipped our rear shield, rattling the whole ship, but Lena held her course steady, threading us through a gap in the wreckage too narrow for the larger hunter ships to follow safely. Behind us, one of them hesitated at the gap, clearly weighing the risk, and that hesitation was enough for us to pull ahead and reach the jump point before they could close the distance. We jumped clear of the system, and this time, when the stars steadied on the other side, nobody chased us through. It took 3 days to reach a neutral court station deep in independent space, 3 days of careful travel and quiet nerves, before Ilith was finally able to present the flight recorder to a panel of judges who had no loyalty to her uncle or his family. I stood beside her as the recording played, clear evidence of the ships that had fired the first shots, their markings tracing directly back to her uncle's private fleet. The judges did not take long to rule. Her uncle's claim to any part of the succession was stripped entirely, his fleet grounded pending a full investigation, and Ilith was formally recognized before the court as the rightful heir, safe now under a protection that even he could not ignore. When it was finally over, she turned to me outside the courtroom, the tension gone from her shoulders for the first time since I had pulled her from that wreck. "You never did ask for your reward," she said. "Still haven't thought much about it," I said honestly. "Then let me offer one anyway," she said. "A place among my personal guard if you want it, or passage to any system you choose, fully funded, if you do not." I thought about it for a moment, about the quiet life of pulling scrap out of the dark, and about the last 3 days that had been anything but quiet. I think," I said slowly, "I would like to stay close for a while, just to make sure nobody else decides to finish what your uncle started." She smiled then, real and unguarded, the kind of smile that had nothing to do with crowns or courts. "I would like that," she said, "more than you know." And that was how a routine salvage run turned into something neither of us had expected. A friendship built in the middle of gunfire and jump space, between a man who pulled broken things out of the dark and a princess who had refused, from the very first moment, to be one more thing left behind.